Good evening, Bethel. On behalf of the Family Life Department, I welcome you to this evening's program. This year, the Family Life Ministries is committed to helping the families of Bethel to succeed, not only spiritually, not only socially, but also financially. Last year, Sister Carmichael and her team spoke to us about the importance of managing our finances and planning a budget. This evening, we are looking at how to develop your family budget. In our lesson for this quarter, we are told that an amazing feature of our relationship with God is that He trusts us to manage His resources, His affairs on the earth. So whether we're rich or poor, it is our responsibility to manage God's resources. The first step in doing so is budgeting. You will be receiving top-rated information free of cost to help you manage God's resources. No need to pay a consultant. Amen? Save that money. We would like to say thank you to Sister Carmichael and her team. Mr. Williams, Kevin Williams, we'd like to say thank you for consenting to be of service to our church members. May God continue to bless you as you share your talents and expertise with us. I would like to also remind the church that Brother Gary Graham is hosting counseling sessions on Mondays via Zoom. It's open for anyone who feels the need to talk and needs support. Bethel families, we are going to support you as best as we can. Please take advantage of the wonderful opportunity. Also, on March 4th, the Family Life Department will be hosting a comedy night in person only. Yes, we are going to laugh. We are going to put aside our grieving and our mourning for a few moments to relax and to laugh. Proverbs says, a merry heart doeth good like a medicine, We will have an open mic segment, as you have heard this morning. So come with your best joke. You might win a prize, and I am looking forward to this event. So to begin this evening, we will all stand and we will sing number 286, which is Wonderful Words of Life, before we pray to begin. Number 286. Sing them over again to me, wonderful words of life. Let me more of the beauty see, wonderful words of life and beauty. Teach me faith and duty. Beautiful words, wonderful words, wonderful words of life. Beautiful words, wonderful words, wonderful words of life. Christ the blessed one gives to all. Christ the blessed one gives to all. The words of life. Send a list to the loving call. Loving call, wonderful words of life, all so freely given, wooing us to heaven, wooing us to heaven. Beautiful words, wonderful words, wonderful words of life. Beautiful words, wonderful words, wonderful words of life. Sweetly echo the gospel call. Sweetly echo the gospel call. Offer pardon and peace to all. Pardon and peace to all. Wonderful words of life. Jesus, only Savior. Sanctify forever. Sanctify forever. Beautiful words, wonderful words, wonderful words of life. Beautiful words, wonderful words, wonderful words of life.
Let us pray. Father, we thank you this afternoon for the opportunity that we can come together and we can learn and we can be encouraged, Lord, to do what we need to do to improve our finances and to build up your kingdom. Bless the participants today. Give us open minds, and may we, as a result of being a part of this program, be better stewards of your gifts. In Jesus' name, amen.
We'll now turn the program over to Sister Carmichael.
Thank you, Sister Harrigan. So Kevin and I are back.
Hello. Good evening again.
And you want to, well, because they're broadcasting, so
Oh, okay.
yes, the camera, working with the constraints. But we're back and we're excited to continue talking to you more about budgeting and also investing, because I know that there were quite a few questions on investing the last time, and we were trying to cover a whole bunch of things in a short period of time. So we'll actually start off our discussion today, first talking about investments, and then we'll dive into the budgeting. So if we can advance to the next slide. But we'll briefly, again, just an introduction for those of you who do not know who I am. I'm Erin Carmichael. I've been a longtime member of this church. I am a certified public accountant. I work in private industry. That's really where I've spent my career right now. And I'm in charge of the accounting for my organization. Prior to that, I spent a number of years as a public accountant as an auditor, and looking at examining the financial books and records of various organizations. And I also volunteer with the National Association of Black Accountants, which is how I met Kevin and also how I got one of my jobs, actually. I don't think you know that, but NABA did help me land a position, and I'm forever grateful for that opportunity. So I'll let Kevin introduce himself.
All right, thank you. Good evening. Yeah, good evening. Thank you for having me back here at Bethel. Definitely excited to be here and be able to talk to people, especially people that look like me, about finances and being great stewards of our finances. Just a little bit about me. So as Erin said, we met through NABA. So currently I am the president of the NABA New York chapter.
That's a big step, actually. He's the president now.
So I'm definitely looking forward to continue educating our community in various ways, whether it's with our various corporate partners or just with people in our local community. I think we have a lot of resources to continue to share and make sure that we close the racial wealth gap that many of us know about, right? So just keep feeding the information to our community. One thing I love is when the kids is here, because we actually get to have the conversations with our elders and then go back and talk to our kids, allowing them to take the information in and then also see how they get to process that information, and we keep educating them along their paths as well. So by the time they're 18, they are a little bit more financially sound, whether if they want to go out the house or still stay at home, that at that point they are financially educated. I am currently an entrepreneur, so I am a photographer and accountant, primarily focused on taxation. So right now is like my busy season, so it's good to actually be here and not be staring at a computer screen and be around all of you lovely folks. Huh? Say it again?
A business card.
Yes. I hope I brought some today. I think I got some on the side of my bag, but if anything, I'll give you my direct number and then we can speak that way.
All right, so I'll see if we are synced up now.
Yep.
We are, thank you. Audience, are you able to make out what's on the screen? Okay. Sister Christine, though, you can go to the next slide.
So by a show of hands, so today we're doing investments in budgeting, right?
Okay, thank you.
You want to start with the intro? I just want to ask this one soft question. Does anyone have investing accounts now? Have any investments, 401k, 403b? Okay, one, couple individuals? Okay, a handful. All right, just wanted to kind of get a survey of the audience so we can understand as we go. But
all right.
Kick it off with the intro.
Yes, so I'll go over our agenda for our discussion this afternoon. So we've covered the introductions, we'll briefly cover our objectives, and then we'll get into some questions that we have for you as another knowledge check. We'll dive into the investing, budgeting, the impact, and then the resources. So if we go to the next slide, our objectives for this session are to understand the role of God in your money management activities. And that's going to be, anytime we come up here and talk to you, always going to be about that. And then to learn some additional concepts of money management and share practical tips. That's always what Kevin and I would like to leave you with. So we'll advance now to the knowledge check. And these questions were part of a investor survey that was provided by the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, and they regulate the brokerage firms. So, our first question, if you buy a company stock, do you own a part of the company? Have you lent money to the company? Are you liable for the company's debt? Or will the company return your original investment to you with interest? What do we think that answer is? A, B, C, or D?
I can't hear y'all now. A, what else?
A, good. And if you're investing, this is a survey that they gave to all sort of general investors. So the correct answer is A. And a stock is known as an equity because each stock share will represent a small percentage of ownership in that company. And it usually also entitles you to vote in the election of directors and on other matters taken up by shareholders at their meetings. So sometimes you may see a big packet come in the mail. I mean, I know they used to, and it'd be like a proxy vote or something, right? So as an investor or as a shareholder, you often have a say in what happens with the company.
And I think option D, it sounds really great as well. The company will return your original investment to you with interest. I think that is always the goal, but not guaranteed, especially as you go into investments.
All right. So, yes.
Companies look at you more favorably if your investment is a lot larger than the other person. So for instance, I invest $50,000, the other person invests only $200. So do you get a preferential treatment?
A lot of companies in their as the shareholder rights, right? The more shares you have, the more votes you could have, right? And with more votes, they're going to pay more attention to you. So that's just in general.
Yeah.
You may, and at a certain point, you may even get to sit on the board of directors. Like there's different tiers, but it again depends on how the company is structured.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the next question: if you buy a company's bond, do you own part of the company? You've lent money to the company. You are liable for the company's debts, or you can vote on shareholder resolutions. What do we think that answer is? B? B? Everybody's good? B? Yes. Okay, B, yes. So bonds are loans that you've made to a corporation or a government body in exchange for regular interest payments and the return of principal at a future date. Companies will issue bonds to pay for capital expenditures, operations, acquisitions. But unlike stockholders, if you're a bondholder, you don't receive any ownership rights. And there's usually you don't have the opportunity to vote, none of that, unless it's a convertible bond, and then there's a little more complication around that, but just a general bond, you don't have a say in what happens to the company. You've only lent them money. All right, so if we can go to the next set of questions.
All right. In general, investments that are riskier tend to provide higher returns over time than investments with less risk. Do we feel that's true or false? True. That is correct. So the stocks and bonds tend to reward risk over long term. Let's go to the next one. If a company files for bankruptcy, which of the following securities is most at risk of becoming virtually worthless? And again, that's when a company files for bankruptcy. Oh, I'm sorry. A, preferred stock, B, common stock, or C, the company's bonds. I heard something, but really couldn't hear it. B? All right, so it is B, the company's common stock. Want to explain why?
So shareholders of common stock have the last claim on any assets. If you have a bond, essentially, if they're filing for bankruptcy, you are sort of the first creditor. And then if there's money left over, then the preferred shareholders will get whatever's left. And then usually there's nothing left, and so the common stockholders often get nothing. And it's all because of how the way the company is structured, and these are all documented somewhere on the company's records, what your rights are. All right, so we'll go to the next set of questions.
I don't know if the rest of us are sitting here, but it seemed that you should give us an understanding that the difference between these stocks. What is the common stock and the preferred stocks? You know, what are the differences?
Yeah, we're gonna jump into that as we go through the slides. Just for the knowledge check purposes, just gives us understanding of what the room understands, so that way we can elaborate as we go into the actual lecture.
Yes.
So the next question we have is, which of the following best explains why municipal bonds pay lower yields than any other government bonds? A, municipal bonds are lower risk. B, there's a greater demand for municipal bonds. And C, municipal bonds can be tax-free. All right, so even though municipal bonds are less risky, they are also tax-free. So a lot of people actually utilize them for C to reduce their tax liability as they actually create revenue from it. I believe a lot of state bonds too are tax exempt, if I'm not mistaken.
In the state.
In the state that they are issued in.
Yeah.
So if it's like a New York state bond, it would be exempt in New York. But
If
it's
you're filing in New York, yeah.
if you have a state bond from Alabama while you're currently living in New York, you are going to pay taxes on that bond. So it's usually the bonds from your local municipality that will be tax exempt for you. And our next question is, over the last 20 years in the U.S., the best average return have been generated by A, stocks, B, bonds, C, CDs, D, money market accounts, or E, precious metals. A? A is correct. So according to historical data, a portfolio of stock generated an average annual over the past 20 years that outpaced any other investment category on the list. Now, even though stocks historically perform and give better returns than all other investments, it's also making sure you're picking the right stock, you're studying the stocks, you are looking at a company's balance sheet, you're looking at their income statement and also their, I like to say, their gross profit margin, and not just picking stock blindly on what you like and what you do utilize a lot, even though those are good ideas. We have one more knowledge check, or is that later on? Let's move on. Okay, so we have two more questions and then we're going to jump in. So what is the main advantage that index funds have when compared to actively managed funds? A, index funds are generally less risky in the short term. B, index funds generally have lower fees and expenses. Or C, index funds are generally less likely to decline in value. Any other? A is index funds are generally less risky in the short term. B, index funds generally have lower fees and expenses. Or C, index funds are generally less likely to decline in value. Index funds are generally less likely to decline in value. That was C. All right, that's a good bailout, but no, we're going to take what you went first. Go with your gut, and it is actually B. So index funds are known as passive funds that are structured to invest in the same securities that make up a given index and seeks to match the performance of the index. They track whether they are positive or negative. So as the name implies, no manager or management team actively picks stocks or makes buys and sells decisions. Active funds, in contrast, attempt to beat whatever index serves as the fund's benchmark, although that is very important. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. And there's no guarantee that they will also do so. Oh, and our last question, past performance of an investment is past performance of an investment is a good indicator of future results.
B, false.
All right, good. Yes, definitely correct. As you can tell, like just looking at stocks over time, that they will either go up, they will go down, but just because it went up in previous seasons does not mean it will always go up. So always, again, you would just want to make sure you educate yourself on the stock, but not assume because it's performed great on previous timetables, it may not be true for this timetable we're at now.
And that's because no one can predict the future, right? So they're not.
History gives us the average, but no man knows the future.
Yes, if you're going to ask a question. So the question was, but shouldn't I look at what's happened in the past? Yes, you should look at what's happened in the past to inform you on your decision making. But again, this is a disclosure that you will see all over marketing materials for investments, and they have to say that, right? Because they cannot predict what the future is going to hold either. So everyone is taking a chance. And investing is a risk. There is a real risk that you're taking because you do not know what's going to happen in the future. Yes.
That's always been a question as a Christian to say, should we invest in this kind of situation because of the risk you're taking? It's like a gamble. And it's often been said as Christian, we should not gamble. So how do you answer this question?
All right, I'm gonna give my take on it because it's like I agree, right? I sometimes look at the stocks as is it gambling or is it actually great money management? I don't quote me now. I know we're in church, but there is the talents. I think we spoke about that last time, right? What are we doing with our talents and resources? Are you managing your resources to where it's able to provide and grow to where you can share those resources? So same thing with our finances. If I have to work at one job and I put $10,000 away into my retirement, the goal, in the same way I see with God, is to stretch those resources to make sure it impacts others around me. Now, through proper education and true wealth, which is knowledge, it allows us to actually learn how to invest it and how to use it in different time periods. So even though I think sometimes it's gambling, I also look at it as an investment tool for us to use our resources for later on in life.
I personally wouldn't look at it as gambling because investing, you're putting your money in something. Yes, there's a risk because you don't know what the return will be. And gambling, there is no virtue. There's no substance. You just put out $10 and who knows what you will get, where that money is coming from. There's no virtue of that money coming in. Yes, you see other people put their money together. That's all it is. And basically, in a sense, you're robbing somebody else.
I beg to differ because there are willing participants along with you.
I'll take out the word robbing, another person. But understanding our nature of our church, you work for what you earn. There's no work in this. When you invest, there's some work that's going on in the background. Something has been sold, something has been bought, and there's value that's accumulated. There comes the difference between gambling and investing. And I wouldn't look at it in the sense that it's gambling per se. I would think I'm doing an investment just as if I was the one directing the investments. I buy properties, I sell properties, and I get a return from the properties. I'm the one managing it. In this case, I have someone else managing for me. But in terms of gambling, in terms of playing lottery, so forth, those things are not taking place. It's just money's coming to path. And
what about sports gambling?
Gambling.
I only ask that because, and I argue that same line, because I watch my friends gamble, and the time that it actually takes for them to study the players, study the team, actually look at past performances of players, see who's actually playing, seeing what numbers they actually put up against this type of defense and this type of offense, kind of correlates to me actually studying the business balance sheet and understanding the activities and how they choose to invest their money in and out of the communities. I do agree with gambling. Sometimes you could actually lose all of your money, same like investing. But investment, it's backed by something.
I will not get into that one.
But it's very
It's more
comparable.
complicated for me.
This
Yes.
is why I stay away from the gambling aspect.
Yes, Brother Parkinson, and then we're going to move forward. Brother Parkinson, I'm sorry. Unfortunately, the people online would not be able to hear you. Yes.
Yes, I would tend to support what Brother Perry said. There's a difference between investing and gambling.
Indeed.
And it is time for us to stop that kind of mantra about investing is gambling. Because you purchase a home and you expect to get an income from it. Is it not investing?
If I purchase a home and
You purchase a second home and you're expecting that the rent that you collect from it would come to you as income.
yes,
That's an investment.
yes,
Okay? So it is time for us as Christians to stop that mantra, that argument about investing is gambling. Because if you have a retirement plan, and most of us Christians, those of the senior Christians who have retired, the only reason why they are able to retire comfortably is because they had a pension plan or a retirement plan on the job. Where was that money? It was not sitting in the bank. It was being invested in the market. And if you have your money and put it in the bank, what does the bank do with your money?
invest.
No, what does the bank do with your money?
Loan it out.
They use your money. What do they give you?
Pennies.
Nothing. So, having money in the bank, your money is being invested. If the fire will burn it up. You put it on the mattress, fire will burn it up. Okay?
So let me ask you.
So, that's a risk again.
Yeah.
So it is time for us as Christians to stop that argument. It's very important for us to stop it.
Gotcha.
It should not be preached from the pulpit. It should not be repeated. It's time for us to stop it. It is holding back our people. That argument.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Parkinson. All right, this seems to be a very interesting point right now. Last comment, please.
Yes, there are, and as people who are thinking about investing, we need to consider the type of investments we're going to be involved in, because there are investments that are risky, and so, and a lot of times, if you have a lot of money, which I don't, I don't, but I've been told that generally you would employ someone who's going to help you with investment, and they'll tell you which ones are riskier than others. And so the stock market does have influence over a lot of people investing. Usually they invest in the stock markets, but they'll tell you, those who understand the stock market will tell you when to invest and when to sell and that type of thing. So you shouldn't go into it on your own if you have no idea what it is, because then you can lose everything that you have. Because there's some stocks that are more volatile than others, and some stocks that have a better output than others. That's my little bit of knowledge about that. Thanks.
Thank you. So, before we jump into investing, I think it's important for us to talk about setting goals. So we'll move on to the next slide. So when it comes to goal setting, the most important thing, especially with investing, is pick a time frame. How long do you have to achieve your goal? And this is actually something that we spoke about briefly the last time as well. You want to sort your ideas into targets, What are your short-term goals? And those are things that are usually achieved within 2 months to 3 years. So let's say I want to buy a car, right? And I want to buy a car in the next 2 years. That would be a short-term goal. Or if you want to take a family vacation, maybe at the end of this year. So that's, this is February. So you got 10 months left to plan. And to get those funds together. And then you want to think about what are your long-term goals, things that are going to take 3 or more years. So maybe you want to buy a home. That's usually the biggest one. Or retirement, saving for retirement. So it's important to have your goals set into those categories. And then most importantly, move on to the next slide. You want to commit your plan to God in prayer and claim his promises. So in 1 John 5:13-15, we are told, I write these things to you who believe in the name of the Son of God, so that you may know that you have eternal life. This is the confidence we have in approaching God, that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. And if we know that he hears us, whatever we ask, we know that we have what we asked of him. All right, so now let's move on to our next slide. And in thinking about investments, these are typically the categories that the different investment products will fall into when you think about what your time horizon is. So for your short-term investments, usually you may use a certificate of deposit or a brokered CD. And many of you know what a certificate of deposit is, but it's basically you give the bank the money and you earn interest on that money. At the end, the bank will return you whatever money you gave them. Now, there's also another product out there called a brokered CD. So typically with the regular CD, the money's locked up. And if you need to pull the money out, there's penalties and things that would be associated with you pulling that money out. So you tend to not want to move that money from a CD. But with a brokered CD, you're able to sell that CD on the secondary market. So secondary market meaning you go out and sell it to a different bank or to a different entity. And they would buy that from you, give you whatever money the CD would be going for at that time. So you can lose money if you have to sell it for less than face value. So let's say you bought that CD for $1,000, but right now if you wanted to sell it on the secondary market, you'll get $990. So you're gonna lose something. So you also would not wanna move that money as much as possible, but it's another option. And also with a brokered CD, they tend to pay a slightly higher rate than a bank. So, if you're interested in CDs, definitely look into that. They're also protected by FDIC insurance when it's issued by an FDIC member bank. So you want to be careful that you're getting that CD from an FDIC member bank so that then it's protected, just like if you went to Chase or Citibank or one of the others. And those brokered CDs are available to you through a brokerage account, which we'll get into later, but you can't just go to your bank and get a brokered CD generally. You usually have to have a brokerage account in order to be able to access that product. And then money market funds, which are a specialized type of mutual fund that will invest in short-term bonds and generally provide higher returns than interest-bearing bank accounts. When you're using money market, you're basically just trying to preserve the value of the money that you put in there. So that's usually what that return will track with. And then lastly, we all know a savings account. So I'll turn it over to Kevin.
And then next we have long-term investments, right? So we have mutual funds, index funds, stocks, and bonds. So just to give a little bit about that, a mutual fund it allows investors to actually pool their money together to actually buy stocks, bonds, or anything else that a fund manager decides in the line of the fund's objective. Mutual funds are really popular amongst investors, and they provide someone to make an investment choice, offer diversification that are affordable and fairly liquid, meaning that someone can redeem them for their shares at any time.
One thing that you'll know about mutual funds, they're often not priced. When the stock market is open, they're often not priced during the day. You usually get that price at the end of the day, and that's just the way the market functions with those. Another thing about mutual funds, depending on the type of fund, you want to pay attention to the types of fees that are being charged, because if the fees are high, they can also eat into your earnings that you're getting on the fund.
And then next we have index funds. These are just different types of mutual funds. Especially they're more index focused, so it may be around like the S&P 500. So we have specific funds from just the S&P 500. And then stocks, it offers you part ownership of the company, and some stocks come with voting rights and ownership.
So I'll pause there, and Brother Skinner, you did ask a question of what was common versus preferred. So as Kevin just mentioned, common, you'll usually have voting rights, and you're not entitled to, there's no guarantees with common stock. And preferred, there's usually a little bit more of a guarantee. Like if the company, it may have a guaranteed dividend in it, or there may be requirements for them to issue a dividend every year, and then you have a higher claim on assets. But oftentimes it comes with no voting rights. So that's really what the main difference is with common versus preferred.
And then we have bonds. Bonds is similar to an IOU, aka a loan. So when you buy a loan, you are lending money to the actual issuer that you purchased it from. In return of the loan, the issuer promises to pay you a specific amount of interest over the time, and then also paying back the full principal as well.
All right. So if we go to the next slide, understanding the stock market. So stocks, debt securities, which bonds fall into that, mutual funds, and exchange-traded funds, which are a type of index fund, are the more common investment instruments. And most importantly, you want to research your investment before you purchase it, not after. So any company that's publicly traded will have an investor relations webpage on their .com website. You can also visit common sites like Yahoo Finance or Google Finance, and then Morningstar.com. You want to understand the characteristics of the investments, the features, the potential gains or losses, if it's going to pay you a dividend, and the distribution of profits, again, before you're investing. You can also practice stock investing to see how your portfolio would perform on sites like there's an Investopedia simulator that's available for you to do that as well. Then we'll go to the next slide.
So we're going to talk about some investment strategies. So a good investment strategy is an investor's plan and a guide to their investment decisions based on their individual goals, risk tolerance, and future needs for capital. So the components of most investment strategies include asset allocation, geographical guidelines, whether it's domestic or international, buying and selling guidelines, and the risk guidance. Asset allocation strategies help determine the percentage of stocks and the debt securities and cash income to diversify a portfolio to reduce the risk. So generally, your portfolio might have, that slide. Based on how old you are and the type of risk you want to have, that is going to determine how you actually make up your investment strategy. So,
just before we dive into that, I just want to make sure everyone understands what we're talking about when we say investment strategy. So, right? So if you care about where your money's being invested, that would be a geographic guideline. So you may say, I don't want to deal with any foreign investments. I don't want my money invested in Asia because maybe it's very volatile over there. I want my money to be focused on investing on US-based companies. So that would be a domestic approach. And then when we say buy and sell guidelines, that means like, well, if the stock hits this price, that's what I'm going to either purchase or sell it at, right? So that would be another part of your strategy. And then asset allocation is something that we're going to talk about now, but the risk guideline would be basically, am I willing to expose myself to maybe a company that just went public? Am I looking for a company that's more established? What is my tolerance for the type of company that I want to put my money with?
So this is
We'll go
just
to the next slide.
Recommended retirement planning, not that you have to follow it yourself. So generally in your 20s, right, they advise this is your time to be more risky when you start out your 401k or 403b. So it may be heavily invested in stocks. Here they give an 80 to 90% that where most of your stock can most of your portfolio can be invested in stock, but understand that it could be very risky. And that's something they would advise someone who's young, who is planning over the next 40 years. Relatively to when we get towards the end, if you're in your 70s and 80s or even 50s and 60s, you want something that's not risky, so you might want to have it in more debt or in cash securities that you know are going to actually pay you back versus the stock market that is going to be very volatile as well. So if I know I want to retire, I probably don't want to have a lot of my funds inside of the stock market and just have it in something that's more secure.
So I'll pause there. Any questions about asset allocations? No?
And I'm gonna just give this tip. I personally followed that in my 20s, 80 to 90%, put a lot of things in stock. But what no one educated me was on how to actually understand the company and the performance. So I was like, all right, I'm young, I can risk it, I'm gonna make some money. And then 2008 came and happened. And I was not paying attention to my account. And I had everything in the stocks. And when I realized, the stocks started to dip. And so did my account. But no one educated me on actually understanding the performance of the company, look at their quarter, look at their quarterly, look at their year end. Some of them have to report, right? Especially if they're publicly traded.
Yeah.
So any publicly traded company that you're invested in, they report quarterly and then annually. So actually looking at those reports. At the time, majority of mine was in airline stock, so it took a real belly. But again, that was based on the recommended guidelines for someone in their 20s. Now, I should have made a pivot, but I wasn't educated that much on it to understand, okay, when I need to move my money into something more secure or not. And again, that will be based on where you are currently at and your goals that you are setting your retirement plan up for.
So I think it's important, one of the key things is to monitor what your investment accounts are doing. A lot of people don't check, and you could be continuing to put your money into a strategy that is actually on a downward trend. So you want to make sure that you're checking your retirement accounts at least once a quarter, just to make sure that you're keeping an eye on what's happening with your investments.
Question. I choose to invest in the stock. I understand I will have a broker assigned to me, correct?
Not always, not these days,
necessarily.
not these days.
So it will be wise to have a broker that understands the stock that I'm involved with, that can intelligently advise me when and how to move my money. I'm asking.
You're asking. So there's a lot of information out there now. I think then even 15 years ago, 10 years ago, where if you can get yourself educated and comfortable, you may feel comfortable with actually managing and monitoring those accounts yourself. There are now the rise of robo advisors with things like Robinhood, and even the major brokerage firms now have robo advising, which is basically you set up what your risk tolerance is, and then based on what your tolerance is, that there'll be algorithms and things that basically will manage your money for you based on if you're like, I'm moderately risky, which may put you into a certain bucket where you can maybe take a 10, 12% swing. There are programs out there that will manage it and do it cheaply. So, you'd want to
more practical.
do what's in your range.
I don't know anything about stocks.
You don't know anything.
And I want to invest because I hear that they can be good returns. So can I hire a manager, or I must be able to manage it myself?
But either or, you can.
Say it again?
You are able to hire someone.
Okay.
You can put your money with a financial advisor.
Okay.
And they will, based upon, again, they'll ask you what your tolerance is, what are your goals. Some of these same conversations we're having here, they're gonna have with you. And based upon what feedback you give them, they will come up with a recommended investment strategy.
Okay, so at the end of the day, I'm always responsible for my money.
Of course, you never just wanna hand your money over. Thank you, Brother Pierre. You never just wanna hand your money over to anyone and then set it and forget it. Many people have been swindled in that way. So you always want to keep an eye on what's going on with your financial investments, even when someone else is managing them.
And that's why it's always good, right? You want to make sure they didn't run off with your money, so you just want to check quarterly what your accounts are doing minimum.
And anyone who you're working with, they're supposed to be registered as a financial advisor. And there's a regulatory body that does actually regulate those financial advisors.
Yes. My question is about being a shareholder in a credit union. What are your rights as a shareholder in a credit union, and how much money you need to have in a credit union to get some returns on your money?
Unfortunately, Sister Dobson, that's not my area of expertise. I don't have that information, but I can definitely look into that and get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
And I don't think credit unions, they're member-owned. So the rules might be a little bit different since they're not publicly traded.
Before my question, I just want to make a statement. On my job in the 401k years ago, a lot of the attorneys were investing in, the packages that they have, and they were making a lot of money. So a lot of the secretaries decided they're going to join that. And then the stock market dropped. Coming one of the attorneys at my job, he never even came back. He went crazy. And a lot of people lost a lot of money. So I decided bonds. I did some stock, but I was conservative and I did 401k, yeah. So following them, because they were, they figured they were attorneys and they're making a lot of money, they know what they're doing. But when the stock market fell, everything went. But my question is, what are penny stocks and how do you go about that?
Penny stocks is just like any other stock, but they trade at lower values, sometimes at pennies or less. You can purchase them in the stock market as well. So they're publicly traded. If you want to actually open your iPhone, everyone in here have an iPhone? For the most part, you can at least watch them on the stock app in your iPhone and see how they're actually doing. But to purchase them, you can use a brokerage account.
Which brings us to the next set of
Actually,
items that we
how
have.
to start investing, right? So whether it's penny stocks or...
One second, Kevin. If we'll advance to the next slide, please. All right, go ahead.
Okay. Penny stocks, large stocks, whether it's Tesla, IBM. I don't know if IBM is publicly traded anymore. Let's go to Sony. You want to do your research, but how do you actually purchase those? It will actually be through a brokerage account. Fidelity is a brokerage account. You have Charles Schwab's, Auto Trader. Is it Auto? No, Auto Trade's cars. What's the other trader?
E-Trade.
E-Trade, there we go. E-Trade, that's another brokerage account. You want to definitely research your brokerage account, see how they charge. Do they charge on selling? Do they charge on buying? Is there a monthly service fee? Which one are you more comfortable with? So just finding the right brokerage account. It will be how to actually start your investing plan.
Yes, I see we have a question.
Yes, Sister Kenny mentioned about when the stock market fell, a lot of people lost money in the 401k. And they should move our money to the bonds. Don't the fluctuation of the market affect the bonds also?
Yes. And that's where the research comes in at with the specific bond you're buying, the industry it's in, and what it's invested in as well.
What's the safety net then?
It's all investment.
The safety net is diversification.
Yeah.
You have to be diversified. If you're too concentrated in one thing, then you're fully exposed to if something happens. And if you're all in stock and the stock market's going down, your money's going to go down, essentially. And so you have to diversify. So that means you'll put some money in stocks, you'll put some money in bonds, you'll have some money in cash, you may have some money in real estate. You want to diversify. That's what you have to do. So yes, you have a question, Brother Parkinson, or a comment?
I was just to say that
They can't hear you, sorry.
they are less risky, but they can also lose money. But also, you have to have time.
Time in the market, yes, that's correct.
That's important. Time in the market, not time in the market. Because if you're trying to time the market to say, oh, I'm going to buy this stock because it's doing well, that is not good investment. It is time in the market. You can stay in the market 5 years, 10 years, you're in the market for the next 20 years. And even that analogy that Sister Kelly pointed out, that their attorneys lost money in 2008. If they had just left their account there, 2008, the market went down to 6,000. Where's the market now? 30,000 points. So the market has actually
Come back.
come back 4 times.
Yep.
So if they had just left their money, they lost money, leave it there. Today, they would have 4 times what they had in 2008. So it is important to invest in the market. It's time in the market. Not trying to time the market. Time you can spend in the market. Very important.
So I know that our folks listening online may not have heard, and we will we will have to advance, Sister Dobson, if you just give us an opportunity. We want to make sure we make the best use of time here. But what Brother Parkinson was saying was you want to make sure you're not trying to time the market, but it's time in the market. And so there was a lot of volatility that even happened when the pandemic first hit, and the whole market essentially crashed, right? And now what's happened is it came back strong last year, now it's declining again. But if you're invested in stocks that you want to hold, again, it's about your time horizon. And also, like, do you believe this is a good company? Do you believe this is a good industry to be in? And if that's what your belief is, then you will hold your investment until it recovers or does better. So, you have to have a strategy. So we'll move on now and talk about brokerage accounts, which Kevin just covered really nicely, but we'll put it up on the screen. So it's an investment account that you can use to trade. That's it, period. There are 2 brokerage account options, which would be an online broker or robo-advisors. You can set up a brokerage account really easily. You just need some basic information like where you live, what's your income, what's your Social Security, and you can typically complete these applications very quickly. So I will move on to the next slide. And then we called out quite a few brokerage accounts, but here we got some statistics from NerdWallet, and these are all rated 5 out of 5. You can go to NerdWallet and do this research for yourself as well, but these were the top brokers that they had listed, 5 out of 5. Fidelity, E-Trade, TD Ameritrade, Charles Schwab. Many of these right now, there's been a whole movement where you're actually not paying any fees for trades, and there's 0 account minimums. So you also want to make sure that you're looking at how much it's going to cost you when you're actually looking to purchase or sell, because that also eats into your return. And a lot of these companies, they have apps. You can get it on your phone, and once you have that on your phone, you can get even more information that you maybe would have had to pay for, but now because you have a brokerage account, that information is free and at your fingertips. So how to start investing.
All right, so a strategy for this, right? Picking stocks. So first, you want to build your own portfolio. So you want to consider picking stocks based on products that you buy, news events, and then research your own choices to check expected performance. And then, like we said earlier, diversification. So the process of investing in a variety of companies to reduce the exposure to any one particular company. So this approach reduces volatility and risk to fluctuation in the market conditions. This is why mutual funds and ETFs are a good investment to start with. And then researching companies.
We'll go on to the next slide, please.
So again, we touched on this part. You want to look at the company's financial statements, right? So we're going to check the investor relations page on the company's website. There, we will be able to check the current corporate events, like their 8K, quarterly 10K, and their annual 10K filings. This will give you a lot of information on the company's performance, on how they're doing, what they're invested in. So it's really good. You'll get a lot more detail about that company by reading their financial statements. And it gives you actually a good health of the company and actually understand how they are performing within the market. And then you can also do comparison data to how they're performing against their competitors as well. Another financial statement we will use is the income statement. So it shows what a company has earned during a specific time period.
Go to the next slide, please.
So a company's balance sheet, this is another financial statement we'll use. So a company's balance sheet, it measures at a specific time that the current assets and liabilities that a company has, plus the stockholders' equity. So you want to analyze the balance sheet, you want to analyze it for its assets that the companies have, the debts that it has, and especially looking at the loans, outstanding loans that they may have, who they owe, how much are they expecting to owe. And then also, most importantly, cash flow statement, right? Company can have great cash, but not have a great cash flow. And even understanding what periods is their highest cash flow market. So if we're looking, just say, at an airline industry, cash flow may actually peak more in the summer versus the winter months. So understanding when a company has more cash based on their type of structure. For me, even though I'm not publicly traded, I'm an accountant, right? So for taxes, my heavy season, it's January through, I say, May. So a lot of my revenue as a self-entrepreneur, it's in that early season. And the same thing for certain companies. So understanding where they get a majority of their cash flow at and during that time.
And then the next slide, please. So this graphic I've also shared before, but again, this is about starting out early and doing it often. So if you start out at age 25 and you have 40 years that you want to invest your money, you're able to contribute only $189 a month, which would mean that you would have, over that 40 years, contributed only $90,905. However, because of the growth that can happen to your investment, and we're assuming a 7% growth, that $90,000 would have grown to $409,000, and bringing you to a total value of $500,000. And as you can see, the later you start this process, you have to put more money in just to get the same result. So I'll jump down to the last row. At age 50, you only have 15 years until you're 65. If you want $500,000, you would have to contribute $282,299 just to get that same $500,000, when if you would have done it when you were 25, you'd have only had to contribute $90,000. So.
And I think this touches to the brother in the back where he was saying, sticking in it for the long run. So over 40 years, you would love that your portfolio gave you a 7% return over that time, which would actually give you that growth. And that's why sticking in it in the long run and looking at the overall performance of your portfolio and not just that specific time when a stock may dip.
And I will say this, that even though a lot of members in our church are maybe on the later side of that 45 or 50, that don't underestimate how long you're going to live, because you also don't want to run out of money, right? And so if you're still able to put something away and save, do it. Still do it, because it's always good to have a little nest egg that you can pull from as you get older. All right, so that brings us to, not bad, the budgeting section. So if we can go to the next slide, great. So in the Bible tells us in Proverbs, from our very wise Solomon, there's a question. Yes, Sister Dobson, sorry, before we move on. Thank you for that reminder.
I have a 401k at my job, and ADP used to manage it, but now they have turned it over to Chase.
To who? Sorry? Chase? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Chase is managing it, but I'm not sure what's going on with it. They take a certain amount of money out of my pay every 2 weeks. But there's some, I'm not sure if the companies that they're investing it is giving me the best returns on my money or what it is. I need some help with that.
Who did you say owns it?
Chase is now in charge of it.
And that's exactly who's going to help you, right? Because they are the managers of your account. They actually provide financial advisors as well that should be linked to your account. I will start with Chase and contacting them and speak with a financial advisor, and they will be able to break down what your account is actually invested in. And then as well, you can make any adjustments if needed based on what you want. But it's also speaking to who is administering the plan for you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and a 401k is your money, right? So anytime a lot of companies, what they're doing now, because what they noticed was that workers were not saving for retirement, oftentimes they've now switched to when a new employee is hired is actually an opt-out. So you may have received a letter in the mail many years ago, and it may have said, unless you say you don't want to put your money into the 401k, they're going to take out 2%. But you have full control over how much money comes out of your check and also where it's supposed to go. So if you don't have online access to your account, definitely get that set up so that you can log in and see where your money is and what it's doing as well.
And I think that's usually given through the payroll company, right? Or your employer, how to access that brokerage account.
Yeah, there should be a benefits person on your job. Yeah.
All right, so we're going to go on to budgeting. So the biblical views on budgeting. We're going to use Proverbs 24:27. Put your outdoor work in order and get your fields ready. After that, build your house. And then we have Proverbs 21:5. The plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty. So for budgeting, what we're going to talk on today is how budgeting helps us, right? So understanding how to itemize income and expenses over time, monitor income and expenses to manage your cash flow, identify potential problems that could occur. It allows you to plan for your future endeavors, including unanticipated and anticipated expenses. Respond and adapt to your financial situation, and also helps you achieve short-term and long-term financial goals, which your investing would be in as well.
All right, so we go to the next slide. And then for your budgeting steps, what you want to do is assess your current financial standing, itemize your list of income and other cash inflows. So that could be from your job, or if you have rent that you're collecting from someone, you want to itemize your list of expenses and other cash outflows, identify your goals, add everything up, and then you want to compare, do you have anything left over? And if you don't, then you will need to make some adjustments. So we have this sample budget. If we can go over to the next slide. And in a hypothetical situation, this person is getting $3,500 a month. Now, if you take a look at all of these categories, do we think anything is missing? I didn't hear you, Sister Harry. Oh, the tithe is missing. Very good.
Okay.
So if we can go to the next slide. If we move on to the next one. Great. So right at the top, we're supposed to set aside what's God's first, right? And this whole quarter Sabbath school lesson is actually dealing with us being good managers. So now, unfortunately, we're not going to go back and forth. But on the other side, the person's rent and mortgage was $1,800. And in Malachi, we're told, right, when we return faithfully to God, he will open up the windows of heaven and pour us out a blessing. So even though it may seem like you may have less, God will make it so that it's actually worth more. And so we want to make sure that we're holding God and to his promises, right? So we're going to do our part, and God's going to do his. All right, so now we'll go on to our next slide and some budget tips. So you want to try to save at least 10% of your income through automatic payroll deductions if it's available. So for a lot of us working, you're able to actually split your check into multiple bank accounts, right? And one of those bank accounts, you could actually just direct it to a savings account. So that is also something that you can do as a strategy. You also want to make sure that you have a contingency fund for unexpected expenditures, so save a minimum 3 to 6 months of fixed expenses, and then your target would be 1 year if you're a senior leader or actually have a specialized career. So if you are maybe, you know, an executive vice president and you need to get another executive vice president job, it may not be as easy as if you were at a lower level in your career. So you want to make sure that you have enough of a buffer in case anything does happen in that regard. Track your spending and then prioritize spending and your necessities first, and we'll go on to the next slide. When you're first doing this, and I've actually fallen off a little bit here, I'll admit, but when I first started out, I was doing it monthly and religiously, and then you kind of get into a routine and you get an understanding of where it is that you're spending your money. But definitely you want to update your budget monthly or quarterly just to see like how you are doing. It's never too soon to actually update it. And then add any new information as soon as possible. Some of us may do well when we have tactile things in front of us or visual things that we can see easily. So maybe you want to print it out and post it as a daily reminder. And then I'll let Kevin talk about some of the other tips that we have here.
So you want to update your budget monthly. Always add in any new information. So whether it's income or expenses, if you have a new bill that arises, you want to make sure you update that as well. Printing your budget out and having it in front of you may be a little bit more beneficial for some people. If you have an app, utilize the app, set the reminder. And if you're in a household, right, taking turns to do your budget. Not one spouse alone should be just managing the finances. Finances is a family household thing, and even getting the kids involved. I didn't like that, stay in a child's place, but we actually need to teach our children finances so they can understand the cost of a dollar. And they're actually understanding their own budget, so when they get their allowance, how do I budget my resources so when I'm an adult, I actually understand how to actually budget correctly. And then having an agreed upon consultation threshold for spending limits with your family. I think you talked about that last time, Erin. There's a set amount when you spend that, hey, partner, this is what I'm about to spend. I have to check in with you. So even having checks and balances within your spending with your spouse or with your family, just to keep you in line with your budget as well.
Yep, exactly. Avoids arguments. So now we have an activity that we'd like to do. And for each of these, you're going to have a job. So hopefully you can make out some of that, what's on the screen. But the jobs that we have are Target associate, and you're making $30,000 a year, a registered nurse who's making $90,000 a year. You have an entrepreneur struggling who's making $12,000 a year, a staff accountant just starting out, and you're making $60,000 a year. We have an electrical engineer who's making $90,000 a year, and then a landlord to be determined how much they're going to get. So I'll let Kevin talk about the activity.
And this is which slide? All right, so I guess we're going to go from left to right, and each person is going to call out a number going 1 to 6, and then we're going to start over, and that would be the actual profession you're assigned. So the point of giving you a profession versus the profession you are, so you can understand, hey, if I was working at this job, this is what the income would look like versus the budget I have actually set. So for the budget aspect, we actually want you to put your current monthly expenses, right? So your tithes and authoring, your mortgage, your rent, your transportation, your groceries, your utilities, any phone bills, savings, entertainment, and clothing, right? We actually want you to use your live numbers, but to actually understand it, using another salary. So I like this approach because at one point I was a Target associate and I wasn't making much money, and then made my way up to accountant. and I didn't understand the difference of, okay, making 30,000 versus making 60,000, and actually how to play with that in my budget. That first year, it was like, oh, just spend it. And it was just going out, partying, trips, vacations. But actually, I never see myself earning that much, and actually how to budget and the freedom, right? Yeah. So I want everyone to understand it, whether it's a decrease in your salary or it's an increase, right? Or maybe it's online to what you have. You can understand your buying power and how to utilize your budget more effectively. So we're going to start with you. What's your name? Sorry. Dion. So you're going to be number 1, and then we're going to shoot to the back. So 1, 2, and then we're going to come our way down. So you can start with your 1. All right. So we're going to shout the numbers out just so everyone knows their number. All right. You're 3. 1. So you would be 1.
6.
And then 5. Okay. So each number that you read, right, it will correspond to your salary that you will have up there. So if you're a 1, your salary for the month will be $2,500. So.
You got a hold. All right. You're number 4.
Oh, I gave out too many number 6s. That's okay.
You did. I think you
How many number 6s we have? 1? Okay, look, perfect. It worked out the way it needed to. So if you are number 2, you will have a monthly salary of $7,500. So that would be your budgeted amount for what you to spend on all of your expenses for the month.
You don't have.
Entrepreneur number 2. So if you're number 3, you are earning $1,000 a month. You got to figure out how to make a budget work with $1,000 a month. Number 4, you're earning $5,000 a month as a staff accountant. Number 5, you are an electrical engineer earning $7,500 a month. A month.
Number 4, $35,000 a month?
Number 4, you would be earning $5,000 a month. And I'm going to read those numbers one more time. Number 1, I'm going to start from the top. Number 1, $2,500 a month as a Target associate. Number 2, you are a registered nurse earning $7,500. Number 3, you are an entrepreneur earning $1,000 a month. Number 4, you are a staff accountant earning $5,000 a month. And that's number 4. And then number 5, you're an electrical engineer earning $7,500 a month. I believe Erin is passing out all of the work papers that we need. And let me just grab a budget sheet. Go ahead.
What about the landlord?
Oh, that's the great part, right? What is the landlord making? The landlord actually makes what everyone will be paying in rent. So if your rent is $3,500, your rent is $1,600, her rent is $3,000, the landlords will actually be the sum of all of the people in here. I mean, does that not how it work if I own the building? Does not every person pay me my rent? I mean, the landlord knows his expenses because that's going to be your personal expenses anyway. So whatever your personal expenses is going to be your personal expense. Now, what you earn is going to be by the collective unit of everyone paying their rent. So in the budget part 2, right, we're going to use your actual numbers that you use in your day-to-day. So if tithes and offering, if I know I give $300 a month, I'm going to write that $300. Now, if you have the play money, that's actually so you can see and utilize the money within your budget. So the landlord paid expenses? Who? Gas and all that included in the rent? So if you actually, right? Because if you look at the sheet, it may be a separate for you versus someone else. I'm going to give you, she needs a budget. Yep. Does everyone have a budget sheet? Everyone has one of these? The budget worksheet? Do you need one as well? Oh. And which number are you? So, We're going to have each person pay their rent, and once they actually pay their rent, you will collect that and then total up your total rent. But you do know what your monthly expenses are normally, correct? Because this would be just your personal expenses as you are currently. Oh, because you're going to pay your bills. So let's say, which number are you? You're 4, right? So you have $5,000. This is her money right here. She earns $5,000 a month, so we gave her $5,000 to spend on all of her expenses. Does it? Now, his numbers is going to be different because of his career. So his career is a little bit different, but his sheet is the same. It's just printed out a little differently. Okay. Yep. Yep. I think that'll be. Yep. Does everyone have a pen and paper? No, you can use what you. So you can make it up or have it as a rough estimate of what actual works for you right now.
However, the goal would be to not go over your end. So, Skinner, what we're going to actually have you do, you're going to go around and collect your rent money. So,
Is the end of the month be-
No, that's the first of the month. Get your money early. Don't wait to the end. They live the whole month free. And again, when we're doing budgets, right, are you staying under your budget? Are you over your budget? Is your budget, are you just meeting, breaking even each month with your budget?
But
Sure.
also, if you are going to go over your budget, that means that money's coming from somewhere, right? So are you leveraging credit cards to try to make up that deficit? Because eventually you will have to pay that back.
What was the income for number 4? See this?
5,000.
5,000 for number 4? So
Yes, 5,000.
right here, you would put $5,000 for your income, and then you would start listing what your normal expenses are here. And then you're trying to make sure you don't go over your 5,000 and stay under budget. So from here, we would put how much you pay on your tithes, how much you do on rent, transportation, and then you'll total that up.
Yes,
and then you'll
$2,500
subtract
a
the
month.
difference. Now, there is a side for like budget, and then there's another side for actual, right? Because in real life, we do budgets, and then actuality, life comes and uppercuts us. So it's like, hey, I need this extra $500 because your car broke down. Sometimes those are our unexpected costs, and sometimes it was not budgeted for the month, and that's when our actuals come in. But for this exercise, we're just doing what we project to expend for the month.
What's my rent?
What do you normally pay in rent right now? No. I get what you're saying, but don't worry about what you're earning for the actual, but what do you actually pay in rent, and then you're going to put it down. So for this person, if you was an actual target associate, you may not be able to afford your rent based on that income. Does it make sense? Or maybe you have to go on your budget. Maybe you have to, but we want you just to see how it looks on the actual paper if you earned X amount. But you got to write the numbers down first so we can see it. You got to write the numbers down. Now, don't be cheap with your rent when the rent man come around. So the first part, list your monthly income. We gave those numbers. And then part 2, everyone should be slowly working on adding up your tithing, your mortgage, your rent, your transportation. If your utilities is separate, add it on a line. If it's included in your rent, you could put it down with your rent. If you have daycare, babysitting costs, add that in as well, and then we want to total those up. But as you can see, we actually have this separated your monthly expenses by what is necessary and then what is our wants and needs. Anybody have any questions? I can come by, give you some assistance. Yes, so the part 2 Oh, so this part two is your wants, right? So if you look at this first part,
We just had a roof.
if you look at the second part, right, it actually goes over what we classify as wants. So a phone bill, any subscription, so your subscriptions may include like your Netflix account, Disney Plus, gym membership, savings, right, any additional savings, so you can add that in as well. How much, oh, he, 2,000, so she giving you 500s. Oh, now there's no. See what happens when the rent man come around, how we be ducking him?
So I'll just talk through for our folks listening online what is actually on the sheet. So on the sheet, under part one, you would have your monthly income, and that's what you always want to start with. You want to start with how much money you're going to get in, and that's your income from all sources. So your full-time job, your part-time job, your sometimes job, that's what you would have on there. And then you want to really just break down is your monthly expenses and what your needs versus your wants. So some things that we have on the page would be your tithe and offering, mortgage or rent, transportation, groceries, your utility bills, internet access, cable, satellite TV, streaming services, any daycare, babysitting, or elder care, because those are all things that you would need to cover. And then your wants. You would have things like phone bills, subscriptions, any additional savings you want to set aside, entertainment, and clothing. And what you're looking to see is that your income will be greater than your expenses. You always want to make sure that you have something left over, and most importantly, you're paying God and yourself first by setting money aside for your tithe and offerings, and then for your savings.
Who is the entrepreneur number two? How, can you raise your hands? The ones that are earning $1,000 a month?
There wasn't any. No one said there was.
They took the number. How's the rent collection going right now? I ask this because for the entrepreneurs making $1,000 a month, right? And this is being realistic sometimes with our budget. If I only bring in $1,000 a month and I know I probably have a $1,500 rent, how am I going about closing that income gap to make sure I cover my expenses? Will it be borrowing from someone within my community? Does it mean actually earning different part-time jobs? Going back to school to educate myself to learn a new skill? There's different ways we can go about it, but when you see that deficit, it may also be, okay, maybe I can reduce some expenses. Maybe I have to go back home and live with my parents, right? But seeing what your options are and leaning into your community for support. But the budget and seeing the budget will actually help you understand where you're financially at and where you could trim the fat from.
I can't wait to hear what Brother Skinner's total is.
How your budget looking?
Looking good.
Okay.
I have about $1,030 that actually left.
That you have left, right? Cool. So if you have a surplus, then that means for your budget, you have a surplus budget. So if you have anything left over, that's actually a surplus. You have a surplus of your funds. If you have anything negative, then you're at a deficit for the month. You're spending more than you currently have. And then if you have $0 left, that is actually a break even, where I earned $5,000 and then I spent $5,000.
And if you have money left over, then you find additional ways to deploy that money. So maybe you increase the amount that you're setting aside for savings, and something that you thought would take you 5 years to do, you're able to do it quicker because you have excess also that you're able to put towards that.
5K. 3,000 and change.
So this would be 40, no, 37?
I'll do the math.
Yeah, 3,970. I think, if my math is not right. So your total expenses is $3,970, leaving you the 1030. So, and then we'll go over what to do with that $1,030, right? Because now you understand where your surplus is, where you have that extra funds, and now you get to decide, when you start looking at the surplus, what other categories can I actually go back and put this money into? I can increase my tithing, I can increase my savings, I can increase my investment accounts, I can start putting away extra money for my kids' tuition. So it gives you different options on how you choose to spend that money when you actually can see where your money is actually going. How's everyone doing with their budget? Everyone almost finished or finished? All right. Who got all the money? I think he's still walking around.
So we're gonna, I know we're running short on time, but we just have just a few more things that we wanted to cover, and we can go through that really quickly. So Elder Skinner, if you're done collecting your money, if you can just add that up, and you can tell us.
So what do you do when they don't pay the rent? Who gets the rent? Do you pay mortgage? Mortgage/rent. He would collect all of that. Oh, you want to be technical right now? Ooh. He is the landlord/mortgage company/ I'm going to take all of your money based on how you pay it for your housing. But you are right. There's a technical definition term. I appreciate it.
All right, so we have the next slide up, right? So
she's the one who ain't giving up the money. That's who she is.
So the impact is you want to make sure that you have a plan for your future and develop that path to financial stability. Through that, you're able to influence and support your community. You want to be an example to your children and others in your family. You want to support your church, and you want to build generational wealth. So a good person leaves an inheritance for their children's children, but a sinner's wealth is stored up for the righteous, and that's Proverbs 13:22. And then lastly, we just want to share some additional resources. And I can definitely maybe just put these in something that can go out in the newsletter as well. It seems like it's really tiny up there, but I can read it out. And for those of you at home, just take a screenshot of this slide on your phone as well. So Planet Money is a podcast that's put on by NPR, National Public Radio. They also, in their Summer School 2021 series, covered basics of investing. So if you want to learn more, definitely listen to that. There's also another website that was put out by the AICPA called 360 Degrees of Financial Literacy that provides a lot of information and resources there for you to learn more. FINRA.org, they regulate brokerage firms, and there's a lot of information on there for you as an investor. On Netflix, via YouTube, so Netflix produced something called The Stock Market, and it's available on YouTube. It's like a 17-minute video, but that's something that you can also watch. And then Bill Ackerman, he's one of the most successful fund managers in history. He runs Perishing, and he provides a talk on YouTube about everything you need to know in finance and investing in under 1 hour, and you can watch that on YouTube. And then through the New York State Society of CPAs, there's some additional resources here around financial literacy But there's so much information and a wealth of information out there for all of us to get smarter. So I'll end with this, and I'll pause. Kevin, anything you wanted to add? Or
Yes, so if you have the Monopoly money, right, take it back home and play with the kids with it, engage with it. I think a lot of us learned Monopoly growing up, but I wanted to just utilize that so we could take this back and play with our kids so they can actually have a feel. If you want to use real money, but educate them on how to start placing their money. That's why we had the baskets at first, so you could get understanding of allocating your money to the correct places. With kids, with adults, I think it's just great to do it with all of your loved ones. And understanding that your financial situation is going to change, your income is going to change over time. So your budget is always going to change, and just always be ready to make the adjustments as necessary.
all right. So Elder Skinner, how much do you have your total? What was it? Just. Oh, he's still counting. We'll take a guess and say it was more than $10,000, right? I think that's 8,100.
I got that tendency holding back.
8,100. 8,100. All right, thank you. So that ended up being our final salary for the landlord. And we'll end with this. If we can go to the next slide, great. In 2 Corinthians 9, 6, verse 8, it says, remember this, whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows generously will also reap generously. Each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to bless you abundantly, so that in all things, at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. So I want to thank everyone for coming out this evening. And we have one question, Sister Kelly.
The other day, we were talking about tithing, and Pastor, he's not the first person I heard said it, but that people who get Social Security don't have to tithe on your Social Security. But most of the money we make on Social Security came from investments. So we made an interest, and so we're paying on the interest. We're not paying on what we put in over the years. Because if you're retired for 10 years, I think you make more money than you ever put in the system. So I think we should tithe on it. What's your take? You tithe on the money you make per month, you get per month. Because you're really, I lived in England, right? I worked for less than 5 years. And for the past 10 years, I've been getting money from England. I didn't put in half of that money. So I had to pay tithe on it because this is interest that I made on that money, whatever I put in.
So we are called to tithe on our increase. So however you have determined your increase, that's what you should tithe on.
So,
that's a political statement, to tithe on your increase? Huh? The answer? All right. I am done. I just want to, I already know I'm over time, and I don't want to go too much over time, but I would like to turn the program back over to Sister Harrigan and LaShawn.
That is a very powerful point that you made. And I think it's a good support for us to decide to tithe on whatever you get for Social Security. If you're going to tithe on 10%, I think one of the questions you're going to ask yourself is, how am I going to determine what percentage increase I got when I invested and got more back for Social Security? That's one of the challenges. But because we can't determine that, it is the safe thing to do is to go ahead and tithe as the Lord leads you. Amen.
Amen.
I have a couple of questions.
Couple. That sounds like 5.
Somebody have increase, like myself, based on the budget I had $1,030. Yes, surplus.
Surplus, yes.
What's your advice that I do with that?
I will go back into your budget, right, and then see where you want to allocate those funds. Now, if you have $10,000 extra $1,000 a month, right? Do you want to increase your spending to church? Do you want to increase your family vacation? Do you actually want to put this away for a washing machine that you're not expecting to buy because it's going to break down?
Okay.
It's planning for the unexpected and also the unexpected with the surplus.
Right. In the contrary, someone who's got a minus, what's your advice
Now,
for that person?
if you have like on that budget,
If I had $1,300 less or I overspend, what would your suggestion be for someone like in that category?
so in the budget we provided, right, on that second part of that part two, we had the first part was our necessities, and then the second part was our wants. So I would start to evaluate our wants, right, and see where we could trim fat. Maybe I don't need to have 2 subscription accounts a month. Maybe I'll just go with Disney. You know what? I'll cut Disney and Netflix off, and I would just go with YouTube and just pay for my internet, right? So I can save $30 a month there. Kids would be probably angry, but it will, start to close that budget gap. Maybe I'm putting too much into entertainment. Maybe I spent too much on clothing. It's even seeing on your rent. Maybe I have to actually move into a more affordable house. Maybe $2,500 isn't the best. Maybe I need to go somewhere where I'm paying $1,200. Is it ideal? Probably not, right? Because you're giving up location, what is offered in your neighborhood, but also listening to what your budget says and moving accordingly. So I always say, look for ways you can trim fat and save. That way you're not overly spending. Or look for different ways to invest and have your money work for you.
Another thing that you might need to do is look at getting a second job, right? If some of these other things are non-negotiables, then you have to consider, do I need to pick up a side gig, a side hustle?
That's my next question.
Right?
You right there.
Yeah. So is there something that I can be doing part-time to help generate the additional money that I need? And you don't necessarily have to be in a negative position to even want to do a side hustle, but it could be things. I know a lot of people, at least from my generation, and the whole movement to try to be financially independent earlier. You might just do that because you're like, look, I don't want to be stuck working for a company who can let me go at the drop of a hat. I want to be able to support myself and buy my own financial freedom. So I'm going to have my hands doing many different types of work so that I can generate the money to get out of that situation and become independent earlier. And financial independence looks different for many different people.
It's a statement I have to say.
Okay.
This is a good training, and also the Holy Spirit, times when I'm preaching on the bus, tells me, tell the people, get a couple notebooks. In one notebook, write down your dreams and goals. Write down your request to God and when He answers. In another notebook, write down what you do from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep, so you can see how you can best utilize your time. In another notebook, write down on a daily basis how you spend your money so you can know where you can save and utilize your money better. In another notebook, write down your life story and also your children's life story so they can learn how you overcome some struggles in your life. And your children can learn. So I think that's it.
Thank you, Sister Dobson.
I think you touched on a great one. I'm going to take these tips because this is probably something I really need to, and I want to start writing more, but I think the one that made the most sense, just hearing from myself, is how I invest my time. I think as we even spoke about investing, the number one thing you can always invest in is yourself, and then it's how you spend your time as well, right? So being mindful of not just how we spend our finances, but how are we spending our time? How are we investing back into ourselves? How are we tracking the time we spent on this earth and not just our finances? And then I love the telling of our stories. I think often, especially now, we lose that storytelling aspect, and it allows us to actually overcome a lot by hearing what our ancestors and what our parents have been through. But often these stories are passed down, and we don't actually get to read it, to hear it after that person has been gone. So you said 3, but it's definitely 4 different books to start tracking. So I appreciate that. She said 2, and she gave us 4.
Entrepreneurship versus employment. What will be your advice to us in terms of financially stable? Stability in finance.
I'll be honest.
Entrepreneurship versus employment.
Neither are financially stable, and that's my opinion, right?
Okay.
Because the employer can let you go at the drop of a hat, and your business can fall at the same drop. I don't income, but again, that could be cut at any time. We've seen it. All of us have seen it. The same thing with your finances of your entrepreneur brand, right? You may have seasons where you struggle to where you actually may have to close up shop, or you may have years where you're doing great, but it's just finding what's good and great for you. The difference, I think, is your discipline. For entrepreneurship, it requires a whole lot more discipline and leaning into support, because it's all on you, versus I can actually just go to a job. This is your task, this is what's expected of you, and we'll give you revenue at the end of it. But as an entrepreneur, everything you do brings in $1. So it's a little bit more different of a hustle.
All right, and then I'm not sure if you can relate to it from here, but I'll talk to you afterwards. ERC credit from the IRS.
Which credit?
ERC.
Employee retention credit?
Yes.
What about it though? Because that could go any way.
Can you elaborate on that for me a little?
So employer retention credit is a credit. So we can talk about that after, because it's a little bit more in taxes. But it is a credit that the IRS does disperse when you are filing your taxes. So that would be more of a taxation question versus like invested in budgeting.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin, for joining us once again as well.
We have one more.
No, she's not.
Can we get a picture while we up here?
All right. I just want to say thank you to Erin and Kevin for sharing with us this vital information. And I want to leave 3 things with you. This is in no particular order. This is what I learned, lessons I learned. Research. Do your research on your stocks and bonds. Know where your money is going. Number 2, have a plan. And lastly, but this is probably the first thing, ask God to grant you wisdom on what you need to do with what He has entrusted you with. Please stand as we pray to close. Dear Heavenly Father, we just want to say thank you for all that you have done for us. We thank you for blessing us. We thank you for the Sabbath where we were able to commune with you and one another. We ask that you will help us to be good stewards of our time, our talents, and our money. We thank you for all that you have done once again. As we leave this place, please protect us as we go to our separate homes. Thank you once again. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Have a good evening, everyone.